Everyone thought my cousin's husband was just stepping over to the bar to grab a cocktail. No one realized it was only an excuse for him to secretly do something that left a table of 10 people completely stunned when the bill arrived. That night, my cousin's in-laws on her side of the family were having a reunion dinner at a restaurant in the US. There were around 10 of us in total, a full mix of generations, from older aunts and uncles to cousins to little kids playing with the kids' menu and fighting over the crayons the restaurant handed out. The atmosphere was exactly what you'd expect from an American family dinner. The table was covered with appetizers, nachos, wings, fries, plus iced tea, beer, Diet Coke, everyone drinking something different. Laughter, people calling out orders, family members catching up, it all flowed non-stop from the very beginning of the meal. It had been a long time since the whole family had gathered like that, so everyone was genuinely happy. Happy in a very ordinary way, but warm. One person was asking about work. Another was asking how the kids were doing in school. Someone else was bringing up old family get-togethers, and the whole table would burst out laughing over something tiny. Looking at that dinner table, anyone would have thought it was just a normal evening, a regular family night. Eating, talking, taking a few pictures, and then eventually heading home. But at that moment, no one knew there was one person at the table quietly setting up the most beautiful moment of the entire night. That person was my cousin's husband. He was sitting beside her, just like always, not loud, not trying to be the center of attention. He's the kind of person who, at first glance, seems very normal, very calm. But the more you notice him, the more you realize how incredibly thoughtful he is. If someone's drink was almost empty, he noticed first. If his mother-in-law was sitting too close to the AC and looked a little cold, he switched seats with her immediately. If one of the kids dropped a fork on the floor, he bent down to pick it up faster than the child's own parents. Those things were all small. So small that if you weren't paying attention, you probably wouldn't even remember them. But it's exactly those small things that tell you the most about who a person really is. He's not the type who talks a lot about being caring. He shows it through his actions. And then, right in the middle of the meal, he stood up very casually and said, "I'm gonna head to the bar and grab a cocktail." It sounded completely normal. So normal that not a single person at the table suspected anything. One of my younger cousins even called out jokingly, "Get something strong, family dinner survival drink." The whole table laughed. He just smiled, lifted his hand like, "Got it," and walked off toward the bar. And that was when everything began. But back at the table, no one knew that. Everyone kept talking like nothing unusual had happened. The older women were still telling stories about when my cousin first brought him home to meet the family. Back then, everyone thought he was polite, kind, quiet. But because he was so quiet, a lot of people hadn't quite figured him out yet. After the wedding, though, the whole family slowly understood. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't fake polite. He didn't try to win over his wife's family with some big dramatic show. But he always treated everyone with real sincerity. He's the kind of person who shows up at the right moment, helps with the right thing, cares in exactly the right way, and somehow does it all so gently. A little while later, he came back to the table. And yes, he really was holding a cocktail. Everything looked so natural that if you didn't know what was coming next, there was no way you could have guessed what he had just done out there. He sat back down, kept eating, kept talking. At one point, when one of the kids spilled chocolate milk, he even stood up to help the server clean it up, then sat back down again like absolutely nothing had happened. The whole thing was so smooth. No one realized the trip to the bar had only been a cover. Dinner went on for a while longer. Some people ordered dessert. Someone started suggesting family photos, And just like every big family photo session in America, there was always at least one person blinking, one kid looking the wrong way, and one person caught mid-sentence with a hilarious expression on their face. The family kept taking pictures and laughing and taking more pictures. No one was in a hurry. No one wanted the night to end too soon. And then finally, the most familiar moment in every family gathering arrived. The bill came out. And just like always, the usual "who's paying" scene began. The older generation said they would take care of it. The younger ones said, "No, absolutely not. We've got it." One of my cousins pulled out his phone and said, "Okay, let's not do the fake fight. Just tell me how much I owe." Someone else was already ready to open Venmo. Everyone assumed we were about to go through the standard family dinner routine of splitting the bill. But the server just stood there, smiled, and said one sentence that made the entire table freeze. "You guys are all set." The whole table went silent for exactly one beat. Someone immediately asked, "Wait, what?" Someone else frowned and said, "Already?" And then, almost all at once, everyone turned to the server and asked, "Who paid?" She smiled, looked toward my cousin's husband, and said, "He took care of it earlier." Every single head at the table swiveled toward him. My cousin's eyes went wide. "When did you pay?" He sat there, calm to the point of being funny, took a sip of his cocktail, and said, "When I went to the bar." In that exact moment, the whole table practically exploded. Someone clutched their chest dramatically. Someone else burst out laughing because they couldn't believe it. One of my younger cousins pointed at him and said, "No way, that was the cocktail mission?" One of my aunts was laughing and shaking her head. "I knew it, he was way too casual." That was when everyone finally realized it. That trip to the bar had not just been about getting a drink. He had used the perfect moment, when nobody was paying attention, to quietly pay the entire bill for a table of 10 people. And honestly, the part that warmed my heart the most wasn't even the fact that he paid. It was the way he responded afterward. The second everyone realized he had covered the whole thing, the whole family started insisting on paying him back. One person asked how much to transfer. Another said the least they could do was split part of it. Someone already had their phone in hand and asked, "What's your Venmo?" But he shook his head immediately. Not in that polite, half-hearted way people sometimes do. He was firm, clear, absolutely unwilling to let anyone pay him back even a little bit. He smiled and said, "Nope, absolutely not." People still kept trying to convince him. Then he said, more gently this time, "We don't get nights like this very often. I just wanted to celebrate everybody being together." The entire table went quiet, truly quiet, because it was such a simple sentence. No performance, no trying to be emotional. But because it was so genuine, it hit everyone. Because it was true. In America, everyone is busy. Busy with work, busy with kids, busy with school schedules, busy with all the moving parts of their own little households. Getting 10 people in one family to sit down together like that, all at the same table, is not easy. Sometimes you have to plan far in advance. Sometimes you have to reschedule more than once before a dinner like that even happens. So when he said he just wanted to celebrate the fact that everyone was together that night, suddenly, no one had anything else to say. At that moment, I turned and looked at my cousin. She didn't say much. She just smiled. But in her eyes, you could see it clearly. She was surprised and happy. That very quiet kind of happiness. The kind you can't hide. The kind that comes when you realize the person beside you isn't just good to you, but truly values the people you love too. And in that exact moment, I had only one thought. My cousin, really married the right man. The most beautiful part of this story wasn't just that he generously paid the entire bill. It was the way he did it. He didn't stand up in front of everyone to make a show of it. He didn't say anything like, "Don't worry, I got this." He didn't wait around for anyone to thank him. He simply walked to the bar under the excuse of getting a cocktail, took care of everything quietly, then came back and sat there smiling like nothing had happened. A sneaky little act, but such a sweet one. Quiet, but beautiful. And honestly, that's exactly the kind of thoughtfulness people remember for a very long time. As the whole family walked out to the parking lot, everyone was still talking about it. One of my cousins laughed and said, "Man, that was smooth." Someone else added, "You just set the bar way too high for every husband here." Everyone laughed. The mood was so joyful. But inside that joy, there was also a very clear feeling of warmth. And as for me, my heart felt so soft. In a busy, practical life in America, people often think love has to be shown through something big. But sometimes, the thing that stays with you the longest is something small, quiet, and hidden like this. No showing off, no noise, no need for anyone to know right away. Just a husband quietly using a cocktail as cover so he could secretly pay the entire bill for his wife's family, and then refusing to take any money back simply because he wanted everyone to enjoy that reunion night to the fullest. And honestly, I was so happy for my cousin, because finding a good husband is already a blessing. Finding one who not only loves his wife, but also knows how to love her family too, and does it with this much thoughtfulness and kindness, that is a very rare kind of blessing. Even now, when I think back on that night, I still feel that it was one of the most beautiful gestures I have ever witnessed at a family dinner. All because of one cocktail. And somehow, it was enough to warm an entire evening.